Okay, welcome to the next week of 3D Basics in Maya. Today, we're going to talk about combining things, separating things, bridging, and cutting holes in things. And then later we'll do a little bit more on the toy car that we started last week. So, I've got a brand new scene in Maya. I'm going to first set my project, and I'm going to set it to just my... I'll do 3D Basics demos, seems like a good project. Click Set. Now I'm going to save my scene. I will call it, let's say, week 4 demos. Oops. And I don't, for whatever reason, this doesn't have a scene folder in it, so I'm going to add the scene folder. Save. Okay. So the first thing that I want to talk about is joining two separate objects or faces. So I'm going to add a couple of planes to the scene, and when I add them, I'm going to set the subdivisions down to like 4 and 4. They don't need to be that high. So I've got one plane, and then I'll move that over, and I'm just going to hit Command D to duplicate it. Remember, we learned about duplicating last week. So now I have two planes. And for whatever reason, let's say I modeled two separate parts of the same object, and now I need them to connect. I want them to be the same object, and I want them to actually have continuous faces across them. To do that, the first thing you need to know is they need to be the same object. Right now they are two separate objects. I can only, I left click and only select one plane. So to combine them, you want to select them both. So either hold down Shift and select them both, or you can click and drag across. And then you go up to Mesh and Combine. And then when you go to the options, you've got a few options. Merge UV sets, which you don't really need to worry about. Combine skinning, again, don't need to worry about that. So I'm going to just close out of that. I'll just do the regular mesh combine. When I do that, now you can see they both turn green because now they are the same object. All right. So now I have two planes that are kind of technically one plane. And I can go into face mode, and I can select faces on either one, whereas before I couldn't. Now, what I want to do is connect these two. I want to connect this edge to this edge with a face. And that process is called bridging. All right, there's a bridge tool. The way that tool works is you select the edges that you want to bridge, Shift right click to bring up your menu, and right down here we've got bridge. Okay, this isn't the only way to get at the bridge tool. This is just the way that I always do it. You can also, if you have the polygon tool shelf activated, the bridge icon is this one right here. Okay, bridge, create a bridge between two sets of edges or faces. All right. You can also navigate to it if you go to the Edit Mesh menu and then Bridge in the Components section here. All right, 3 different ways to get to it. I'm going to open up the options for it, which again is that little box next to the menu item. And now I can see all of my options for this tool. A linear path, smooth path. You can set the number of divisions and then the smoothing angle. So divisions is really the key setting that I want to worry about. I'm just going to leave it at the default 5 and click Bridge. And now you can see what has happened. I've got connected faces, and the bridge section of this has 5 edges across. So it's 5 divisions across the edge. I can set that all the way down to 0, and then it's just one face connecting the two. Or I can set it to 1 or 2, or whatever the heck I want. I can also taper this, which doesn't really apply too much right now. Maybe if I bring up the options. Yeah, I'm not really seeing much in terms of taper and twist. In part is probably because these planes are on are even with each other. So there's not a whole lot of variation possible. By the way, if you're wondering why this face here is green, it's because it doesn't have a texture associated with it for whatever reason. So if you select that face, right-click, and assign existing material Lambert 1 to it, it'll go back to gray. Okay. Again, that's select the face, right-click, assign existing material, and Lambert 1. Okay. So once more, to bridge, select two opposing edges, shift right-click, bridge, go to your options. You can set your options beforehand if you want. If you don't want to set your options beforehand, you can just click bridge, and then this little dialog box will come up, and you can set the options after the fact and choose the number of divisions that you want. Okay. So that's the really basic side of bridging. How you choose how many divisions you want depends on kind of the surrounding context of the bridge point. I'm going to undo this. So let's say you have these two faces and you want to bridge them, but you don't want to select this one and then this one, bridge, and then select, oops, oh, my mouse stopped working. That's cool. Probably because I was just slamming on the shift key. No, just cause. Stand by. I don't know what happened, but it fixed. Anyway, let's say you want to bridge this whole kind of leading edge. Well, you can do that as long as you select the same number of edges on each side. So I'm going to select all 4 edges on this side, and then all 4 edges on this side, shift right click, and bridge. And that's going to bridge them all. I'm going to set the divisions down. I don't need that many divisions. I'll do 2 divisions. That'll work. Okay. And when I do that, I can select these faces, and you can see that they are connected on all, or they're attached on all connected edges. Okay, so it's not like there's a hidden gap between the 2 rows of faces. Everything is, in fact, connected, all as one object. Okay, and this works. No, it doesn't have to be perfectly lined up like this either. I can take, let's say I take this cube, and I'll set a couple subdivisions in here just to make it interesting. All right. And I'll take a torus, and we'll do, I don't know, 12 and 12. All right. So I need them to be the same object. All right. So I'll select them both. Go to edit mesh, or excuse me, not edit mesh, mesh combine. Now they're the same object. Now what I need to do is actually create the kind of the hole for them to bridge. And this is going to be kind of a common thing as you're modeling, is you need to pay attention to how many faces and how many edges you have as you're going through. And so if I want to connect these two, let's say I want to connect this whole side of the cube. Okay, so I'll just delete all those faces. Now that leaves me with 3 edges on each side, which totals 12 edges. Okay, 3 times 4, 12. Which means I need a 12-edged hole on this side. And so I can select those, and those, and those. That gets me 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. Let's see. Oops. I don't want that selected. And I'm going to need one more, or actually, we'll do this. Okay. So I can delete those faces. And you see it's kind of not quite lined up, so what I might do is select the torus and just rotate it so that it lines up a little bit better. All right. And so now what I can do is I can go through and bridge this, and I can do it one side at a time. So maybe I'll select this edge and then this edge. Whoops. Again, you got to be careful with your selections. And I can bridge that. All right, you can see how it will, and it will do it in a fairly smooth way. And you can adjust the curve type if you want it to have a little bit of a bend to it. Curve, bend, or linear. You can see kind of the differences here. Bend is interesting. You can set twist, which isn't really doing much here, so I'll leave that at 0. I never really used twist or taper for this. I'm sure there are great reasons to use it. It hasn't really come up in my modeling needs. Whoops. Didn't mean to close that window. But you can do it side by side, but you can also just do the whole thing. So if you remember to select a whole edge loop, you just double click on that edge. Whenever you have a hole like this, the perimeter of that hole will be an edge loop. Okay, so if I double click on this edge, it'll select the whole thing, and then I can hold down Shift and double click on this edge and select the whole thing and do the same thing. Shift right click and bridge. Now, we see it gets a little weird because we've got this twist. And we've got this side face here, which before was connecting over here, is now connecting two edges over. And I don't think twist is really going to do anything about that. So one of the things you need to do is be careful about where you select on the model. So I'll select, let's see if we can get this to line up. Here we go. Select this one, Shift, select that one, Shift right click and bridge. Nope, still doing it. So when that happens, what I'll do is I'll select one edge first, or maybe I'll select 3 edges first, just to give my starting point, saying, no, these should connect straight across. Set my divisions down to 1, or 2 is fine. Okay, and then I can select the rest. All right, in bridge, and it'll be okay. Okay, that's much more reasonable. But when you do that, very important, you want to make sure that the divisions line up. Otherwise, they won't connect, and you'll get really funky geometry. So I need to make sure I set the divisions down there to 2 as well. Okay. Now, I feel like I glossed over something there with the selection. I just want to cover that again to remind you. I'll flip over to the other side here. To select this whole perimeter edge, if I just double click, it's going to select everything, and that's not going to bridge nicely. So what you want to do is, instead of just holding down Shift and manually selecting them all, which certainly works, it's just slow, is if you select one edge, hold down Shift and double click on the end, it will select all of the edges in between. Okay. Again, it's select one edge, hold down Shift, double click and select on the others, and we'll select the whole edge in between. It will select the shortest path. So keep that in mind. If it's selecting it in a different way, it's because you're not selecting the shortest path, and you may need to select a little bit more manually. But once you do that, again, you can just go to bridge, set my divisions down to 2, and click bridge, and there we go. So that's bridging. That's connecting two faces or two edges with faces. What happens if you want to connect two faces but you don't want to add geometry, if that makes sense? Let me show you, and hopefully that will make more sense. So I'm going to delete these faces here. I don't want them anymore. All right, so let's say I had these two separate objects, and I want them to connect, but instead of bridging with more faces, what I want is I want these to become the same. All right, I want these to snap and become just this edge to become one edge and not two edges on top of each other. Well, then what I need to do, excuse me, then what I need to do is a procedure called target welding. All right, so let me show you. I'm going to do this in vertex mode, and I don't think there is a... there is, okay. There's a couple ways you can do this. There's actually merging and there's target welding. I prefer welding, but I will go over both of them. So the first way is merging. To do that, I'm just going to select two vertices. Then I'm going to shift right click, and I've got this merge vertices option right at the top here. So I move up to that, and And then I've got a few different options here. I've got target welding, which we'll get to, but I also have merge vertices and merge to center. So if I go to merge vertices, we've got a threshold for how close they have to be before they merge. So if I have like 3 vertices connected, I can tell it to only connect the vertices that are, within a certain range. Otherwise, I can just say, just merge to center. So it'll figure out whatever the center is between those 2 vertices, and we'll snap them together. And now that is one vertex. That's one way to get 2 vertices connected. I use it sometimes, but sometimes I don't want the vertices to move. I want one vertex to stay in place. And that's when I'll use target weld. So I'll select a vertex, and then you want to shift right click, and we want merge vertices, target weld tool. And again, this has options as well. You can merge to target or merge to center. I'll keep it on target. There's also keyboard mouse shortcut. So mouse left mouse button, drag to merge components. So I can just click and drag it over, and it merges it. And if I middle click and drag components, it will merge it to center. You can see that little green dot represents where it's going to merge to. All right. I didn't know that until just now, so that's actually a pretty cool little shortcut there. We'll go over this. In vertex mode, shift right click, merge vertices, target weld tool. And you can just left click and drag one vertex to another, and it will snap together. Okay, now if I try to select and move that vertex, it is just one vertex. Okay, I find this immensely helpful if I need to connect 2 things. It can also be found in the polygon tool shelf. It's this one right here. All right. I believe it is also in the it's in the mesh tools menu under target weld. Oh, by the way, all of these menus, you'll notice they have this double line section right up here. If you click on that, it'll actually rip off that menu, and now you can just leave it open on the side. If there's a bunch of things that you're doing out of that menu, you can rip them off that way.
Cool.
Yeah, I think so. There's also a way to add these icons to your tool shelf and customize your tool shelf. I don't remember what that is off the top of my head. A quick Google will answer that question, I'm sure, or up in the help. Also, you could find the target weld option if you go to the modeling toolkit, which is this first icon on the upper right. You'll see it right down here.
Is welding just for vertices, or is it for edges and faces too?
Weld edges, and it works the same way. You just go to your target weld tool, and there. It's also, again, up here. You can't weld faces, so just keep that in mind.